Thank you for joining me again today for a great story. If you remember, a little bit ago, I read the story Little Red Riding Hood, a classic that most of us were probably already aware of. If you hadn't heard it before, hopefully you were able to tune in and listen to it with me. So today I'm reading the same story, still has to do with Little Red, her granny, the big bad wolf, but this story is told from the point of view of the wolf. So we are going to see, how is that going to make it different? Does the same things happen? What goes on? So let's see where this tale takes us when it's told from the wolf's perspective. So this is, honestly, Red Riding Hood was rotten. The story of Little Red Riding Hood as told by the wolf. Let's get started. Chomp, chomp. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just finishing my lunch. My name's Wolf. Big Bad Wolf. You may have heard the story of Little Red Riding Hood about a girl and her granny. Seems everyone has. My tale is different. Did I say tail? I meant tail. You know, there's sometimes those words that sound the same, but they are spelled a little differently, so they mean different things. So he had to make sure we knew what kind of tale he was talking about. Tail like a story, not the tail like a dog's tail. Once upon a time, I ran out of food completely. The cupboards were bare, the freezer too, and I'd eaten every last vegetable and fruit in the garden, every one. Other wolves might have lunched on little forest critters, chipmunks, bunnies, squirrels, but I'm a vegetarian. That's right, I don't eat meat. Well, I try not to. I love apples. Honey Crisp, Pink Lady, Golden Delicious, any kind really. But sadly, it was a long time until apple harvest. I hadn't eaten in weeks. My stomach growled and howled. It moaned and groaned. It even roared. Then my nose took over. He's smelling something. A girl? Sniff, sniff. I took a whiff. If he takes a whiff of something, what was it? Cake? Butter? In this forest? I had to investigate. And you can see the stream of whatever he's smelling in the air. And he looks like he likes it. Whatever it is. And there she was, Little Red Riding Hood. She looked as plump and juicy as a big, sweet apple. Little Red waved her cape. Isn't it pretty? She said. Yeah, I said. Aren't I pretty? She said. She was admiring herself in that puddle. With this cape, she said, I'm even prettier than usual. Boy, someone sure was full of herself. My stomach growled. So if someone is full of themselves, that just thinks that they think about themselves a lot. And they think they are the very greatest. Little Red twirled a strand of hair. Mother says the cape looks grand with my skin. My skin shines like pearls, or the meat of a ripe apple, I thought, licking my chops. Remember, I hadn't eaten in weeks. Time to chomp. He's just so hungry. The story makes you kind of feel bad for the wolf in a way, doesn't it? He's just starved. But then Little Red said, I can't wait until Granny sees how pretty I am today. I'm bringing her cake and butter from my mother. My stomach howled. 2 meals? Thought, Granny for breakfast, Little Red for lunch, and cake and butter for dessert. Where does Granny live? I asked. Little Red pointed. Down there, in the clearing, the brown house. I knew that house, and I had a plan. Now we kind of think of Wolf's plan, if you remember this from the classic, from the other version I read. What is he thinking of doing? Let's play a game, I said. Little Red smiled. I'm awesome at games. Of course she is. I bet you are, I said. You take this path, I'll take that path. And let's see who arrives at Granny's first. I will, she said. I'm the prettiest and the fastest. I bet you are, I said. My stomach moaned. Before it groaned, I ran. No one knows the forest like I do. I chose the shorter path. I don't think he wanted her to know how hungry he was. Sniff, sniff. I took a whiff. What was it? Apple air freshener? We know he likes apples. Tap, tap. I knocked on the door. Who's there? Called out a voice. Your granddaughter, I squeaked. I've brought you cake and butter from Mother. Door's open, Granny said. So in this version, Granny doesn't seem to be sick, so that's nice. Granny tugged at her nightcap. Green, she said. Isn't it pretty? Oh, goodness. Pretty like a Granny Smith apple, I thought. Aren't I pretty? Granny said. You must have heard the saying that apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, it's true. My stomach roared. What's that noise? Granny asked. Chomp, chomp. I had to eat her. She was no Macintosh apple, but not too bad. I still felt hungry. How big his tummy got. Oh my goodness. Tap, tap. Little Red knocked on the door. Who's there? I called out, crawling into Granny's bed. Your granddaughter, Little Red said. I brought you cake and butter from Mother. Door's open, I said. Little Red walked in and caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Isn't my cape pretty, Granny? She said. Aren't I pretty? I clenched my teeth. What's that mean, to clench your teeth? He's putting them together real hard. He's just clenching them. Trying to hold it in and not chomp her up. Granny? Little Red said. What deep dark eyes I have. I said, the color of apple seeds. Granny, she said. What perfect ears I have. I said, shaped like sharply cut apple slices. Granny, she said, what pretty red lips I have. I said, red delicious. Granny, she said, what lovely skin I have. She's such a silly girl. Chomp, chomp! I ate her up. What can I say? Things look different when you're hungry. She was no Fuji or Crispin apple. In fact, to be honest, she was a bit rotten. But she was better than nothing. Oh my goodness. The end. Okay, so this story... You guys know sometimes I find these stories and they have these think about it little things at the end, and I love it. I love anytime a story gives you a deeper way to get into the story. So gets you thinking, gets you wondering, oh, that's interesting. Why did that happen? How is this different? So I love it so much because it really gets you involved in a story. So think about it. So read a classic version of Little Red Riding Hood. So remember, if you haven't heard a classic version of Little Red Riding Hood, I have actually read this story for us before. So go ahead and go back and rewatch it if you'd like. List some things that happened in the classic version that didn't happen in Wolf's version. Then list some things that happened in Wolf's version that didn't happen in the classic. How are the two versions different? So I don't know about you, but reading through this story, I noticed a lot of things where I was like, I don't remember that from the classic. Or that I found different for this story. Or that in the classic that wasn't in this story. And it's very interesting. So go back and compare the two. If it had been apple season, do you think Wolf would have eaten Little Red and her grandma? So think about if he had had the type of food that he actually really desired and he really wanted, would he ever have chosen to go with his plan and eat Little Red Riding Hood and her granny? Would he have done that? Why do you think? The classic version of Little Red Riding Hood is told from an invisible narrator's point of view. So it's not told by somebody in the story. It's told by a third-person narrator. So they used words like he, she. But Wolf's story is from his point of view. Which point of view do you think is more truthful? Do you think the outsider's perspective into the story was more truthful, or this character in the story? Which one do you think was more truthful? How would other fairy tales change if they were told from another point of view? That's a very interesting thought. For example, how would Cinderella's story change if one of her stepsisters told it? What if the baby bear and Goldilocks and the three bears told the story? Write your own version of a classic fairy tale from a new point of view. That sounds like a really fun activity. So take a story you love and tell it from a different side, from a different character's perspective, and see how it ends. Glossary. We know a glossary, or if you don't know what a glossary is, a glossary sometimes will come at the very end of the book and go over some key vocabulary words that can help you understand the story better. So our key vocab words from this story were character. So a person, animal, or creature in a story. Narrator, a person who tells a story. Remember, in this version, the wolf was the narrator. It was told through his perspective, through his eyes, what he was seeing happen. Point of view, and that is a way of looking at something. So my point of view of something might be different than your point of view. And the wolf's point of view was definitely different from the third-person narrator's point of view of our classic version of this story. And version, an account of something from a certain point of view. So there's different versions, different sides of stories, and it's interesting how your viewpoint changes based on who's telling the story. What version am I hearing? So I hope you enjoyed this different version of this story today, told from a different character's point of view. And go back and watch the original, the classic version, and watch this one again and see what differences you can see between the two. There's a lot of them, but it's very cool. It's very interesting to see. So I hope you enjoyed this story with me, friends. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye.